Why is the start always the hardest part? We dream of the destination. We plan the journey. But when it comes time to move, we freeze. We want to see the whole staircase before we take the first step. We wait for the perfect moment. We wait for the fear to leave. But what if the fear never leaves while you are standing still? What if the path only reveals itself after you walk? This was the wall that blocked Kian. He stood at the edge of the Great Bridge of Mists, a colossal stone structure that stretched out from the cliffs and disappeared into a thick, swirling sea of white fog. On the other side lay the promise of everything he had ever wanted: a new city, a new life, a new beginning. But the bridge offered no guarantees. Its destination was completely invisible, swallowed by the unknown. And so Kian waited. For 3 days, he camped at the bridge's entrance. His small tent was pitched just feet from the first stone plank. By day, he would pace back and forth, his eyes fixed on the impenetrable wall of white. He unrolled his maps again and again, tracing routes he couldn't see, calculating risks he couldn't measure. He studied the wind, hoping it might part the veil, even for a moment. But the fog held firm. By night, he huddled by his small fire, listening to the silence of the chasm below, his imagination filling the void with the sounds of groaning wood and crumbling stone. He was utterly exhausted, not from travel, but from thinking. He had not moved an inch. The paralysis was complete. He was waiting for the fog to lift, for certainty to arrive. But certainty never came. As the third day bled into a cold, starless night, the fog seemed to grow thicker, colder, and more menacing. Kian's hope was beginning to fray. It was then, in the deepest gloom of his despair, that he saw a light. It was small and faint, bobbing in the darkness down the path. A figure emerged from the gloom, shuffling slowly. It was an old man, stooped with age, his face a roadmap of wrinkles. In one hand, he carried a small, dim lantern that cast a weak, golden circle on the ground around his feet. This was Silas, the keeper of the bridge. Kian watched, frozen, as the old man hobbled right past him, showing no sign of hesitation. Silas stepped directly onto the first plank of the bridge. He did not pause. He did not look back. He simply kept walking, his tiny light a fragile spark about to be extinguished by the immense, hungry fog. Panic seized Kian. He had to stop him. He shouted, his voice cracking, "Stop, stop. You can't go out there. You can't see the end." The old man's shuffling feet came to a halt. He turned slowly, his lantern swinging gently, its light illuminating the swirling mist between them. Silas's voice was calm, like the smooth stones in a quiet river. "I don't need to see the end, young man. I only need to see my feet." Kian scrambled closer to the edge, his heart pounding. He gestured wildly into the white abyss. But the bridge could be broken ahead. There could be a gap. It could collapse. "I need to be sure before I start. I need a guarantee." Silas raised his lantern, holding it up for Kian to see. It was a simple thing, a small flame protected by clouded glass. The light it cast was feeble, barely illuminating the next stone plank just ahead of his worn boots. "This light," Silas said softly, "only shows me one step at a time. It is not a beacon to light up the far shore. It is a guide for the here and now. If I stand here, rooted in place, I see nothing but the ground I already occupy. But if I take one step forward, the light moves with me. And then, and only then, do I see the place for my next step." He paused, letting the silence hang in the air. He saw the conflict raging in Kian's eyes. "Fear is heavy, Kian," Silas continued, his voice taking on a deeper resonance. "It is like a wagon with no wheels. It is hardest to push when it is standing still. The inertia is immense. You are waiting for courage to strike you like lightning so that you can move. But courage does not come to those who wait. Courage is not a feeling you find. It is a thing you create. Courage comes to those who walk." Silas took one deliberate step forward, and as he said, the small circle of light moved with him, revealing the next solid piece of the path. The first step is not just a movement from one place to another. It is a declaration. It is the moment you stop asking the world for permission and start giving it to yourself. It is the act that turns the heavy, motionless wagon of fear into something that begins to roll. Once it's rolling, it becomes easier to guide, but it will never, ever move on its own. The old man's words struck Kian with the force of a physical blow, a bolt of lightning. He stared past Silas into the vast, blank canvas of the fog, and for the first time, he saw it differently. The fog was not the enemy. The bridge was not the obstacle. The problem was his own desperate need for certainty, his demand to see the end before he had even begun. He realized with chilling clarity that standing still was not making him safer. It was making him weaker. His immobility was a fertile ground for fear, allowing his imagination to cultivate 1,000 phantom dangers in the mist, each one more monstrous than the last. He didn't need a map of the entire world. He didn't need to see the welcoming lights of the distant city. He just needed to trust the ground immediately in front of him. He needed to trust that taking one step would reveal the next. A quiet resolve settled over him. The frantic energy of his anxiety was replaced by a calm, focused intention. He turned back to his small, pathetic camp. With methodical movements, he doused his fire, packed his meager supplies, and rolled up his map, stowing it deep inside his pack. He didn't need it anymore. He walked to the edge of the bridge and stood beside the first stone plank. He took a deep breath, the cold, damp air filling his lungs. It didn't feel like a leap of faith anymore. It felt like the only logical thing to do. He lifted his foot and placed it firmly on the bridge. The ancient wood creaked under his weight, a low groan that echoed in the silence, but it held. The bridge was solid. He took another step. The fog swirled around his ankles, cold and damp, but it no longer felt like a predator. As he moved forward, it seemed to part just enough, retreating to always keep the next step visible. He wasn't fearless. His heart still hammered against his ribs, but he was moving, and with every single step, the hardest part of the journey was left further and further behind him.